Yeah.
And did the Milwaukee game wrap up already?
No, there's like 2 minutes left. The last I saw, Dallas was up like 111, 103 with 3 and change to go.
They've won 12, 103 with a minute left. So that would give us, I believe, put us in second place. So I was watching that game closely. We obviously have the Heat game tonight, which is Heat Raptors, which is gonna probably determine a lot because if they win, we're still a game and a half back of them.
Yeah.
With only 3 games left to play, so that'd be kind of tough to get in first. But we were kind of nervous about that first seed just because of Brooklyn. But now that Brooklyn is the 10 seed, I don't think they can even compete for the 8 seed. The 7 seed. I think they can only compete for the 8 seed.
I think you're correct. Let me just do a quick little conference check down right here.
So I would really love if because the winner of 9-10
plays the loser of 7-8.
Yeah, and then that becomes the 8 seed. Yeah.
So we need Atlanta to win tonight or win their next. Are they playing tonight, Atlanta? Because I know they played last night too.
Doesn't look like they're playing tonight.
Okay.
But that's huge. I wouldn't mind getting the 2 seed. I believe that would make us line up with either. That means we'd either play Atlanta or Cleveland, which I'm fine with playing either, based on the way they've played this year. Absolutely. Brooklyn's obviously scary, even though they haven't played well. Like they have Kevin Durant. Like that's the only reason why. It's like LeBron games. Like
I mean, KD put up 55 trying to win this game, trying to keep them out of that 10 seed. Yeah.
He's one that he can do that on any given night. So it's just scary, especially in like a series. Like him and Kyrie can just get hot, and they're really hard. They're gonna be hard. They're hard to defend. They're 100%. Especially KD's like he's a matchup nightmare. There's really no one in the league that can really defend him at a super high level. No one can really contain him.
Except for our defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart.
Right. The 6'3" point guard. No, but obviously we have a good amount of bodies we can throw at him. Al's obviously can do an okay job with him.
Yeah.
Tatum's obviously matched up pretty well body wise. They're like similar heights. KD's obviously a little bit taller, but
a little taller, a little quicker. But
we got some bodies though for him for sure.
Yeah. But I'm not looking too far ahead into that. I figure anywhere 1, 2, 3, 4, the Celtics, and if they end up in that 2, 3, 4 spot, they've got a really decent matchup. And it's looking like they won't see Philly in the first round because Philly's got a 2-game lead on Toronto right now.
It's looking like 5-6 looks. I mean, obviously, I think Toronto plays tonight too. I think that's who plays Miami.
But
Toronto probably could possibly slide down to the 7 seed. But really, it's looking like 7, 8, 7, 5, 6, 7 are going to be some combination of Toronto, Chicago, Cleveland.
Yeah.
Looking like 2, 3, 4 is going to be some combination of Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly. Obviously, we could catch Miami. That seems kind of. I mean, they have a 2-game lead on us right now, and they play.
Well, with the win right now, it's 1.5, and if Miami lose,
I think it was 2.5. Oh no, just kidding. It hasn't updated. You're right. So it's 1.5. If Miami loses, it'd be a game.
It would be a game, yeah.
But I mean, that's certainly something we could. But once again, I don't really care about. I wouldn't really care about the 1 seed that much.
No,
rather. But they also, I don't know. I might rather even have 4 just for the fact that if Miami does win, I'd rather probably play a team like Miami than. And I feel pretty confident with Philly, honestly. I just wouldn't like to face Milwaukee first round because I think Milwaukee's really kind of coasted this whole regular season. Honestly,
I hear you. Yeah, they definitely have. I would like to play Chicago round 1, Philly round 2, and then duke it out with Miami or Milwaukee in the conference finals.
Yeah, that'd probably be ideal.
Yeah, that was a hell of a cold open, Maddie. That was good stuff.
I didn't catch all of it, but we got most of it.
Yeah, no, we got a good deal of that. But decent week out of the fellas tonight. This week, I mean, massive fun win tonight against the Wizards. What was it? A 41-point win
because we won against from Sunday to this Sunday. Because we also had the Indiana game they won.
Yeah, They won Sunday against the Wolves, and
They
then lost to Miami. So 3-1 on the week.
I swear they played another game, didn't they? Yeah, they played Toronto. That was the game that no one showed up for.
Oh, right. Yeah, and
The
lost.
Marcus Smart takeover game,
Yeah.
which was a tough loss. But also, I think we had 5 because I think we had 3-2 on the week, which still isn't bad, especially considering one of the games we literally had 4 of our 5 starters out, and we still took a playoff team to overtime, which is something I wouldn't have expected earlier on this year. But
not in the slightest. I'd also like to just point out the fact that Toronto, the Raptors Twitter was ablaze with the fact that Siakam scored 40 points on the Red Claws, and was just so happy that their only little shining light in their beacon of shit that they have. They were so excited that they beat the Celtics by 3 in overtime, down 4 starters. I just thought that was pretty miserable.
Yeah, I mean, typically I'm not sure if it's just from the bubble series, but it seems like for the most time he really doesn't do anything against us.
No, Siakam's not a good. Like I am so anti Pascal Siakam.
My internet's so bad.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of Pascal. I think he's done well this year. I guess I didn't realize how well he has been doing for them. They've played him at center, which has kind of like helped him a lot offensively. He's able to create some mismatches, and they're just so long everywhere else defensively. It really doesn't matter that he's not a great defensive center.
Right.
So they've been able to make it work. What else do we have? Obviously, the Rob injury really sucks. I'm glad we now get Tice at the deadline. That was a move I kind of was like, okay, it's cool. It's Tice. I like Tice. I didn't like Dennis Schroeder. I'm glad that Enes Kanter never has to play another minute, or Enes Freedom has to never play another minute for the Celtics again. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really think it was going to have a huge impact. Obviously, now with Rob being out, and Tice has been starting last 2 games alongside Al.
Yeah.
He's playing a huge role for us, and he's played well. He obviously isn't Robert Williams. He isn't playing to that defensive player of the year caliber. Right. And offensively, you lose a lot. You lose some of the passing ability. You lose that vertical spacing. But he's still a quality player. He's a smart player, and the Celtics really, I feel like, aren't going to miss. I mean, they're going to miss Rob, but I feel like it's not going to be a huge drop off like it would be if we had to play. Enes Kanter some minutes if we were out centers, if we were in the same situation we were earlier in the year with just Al with like Al and Grant having to make up all those center minutes.
Right. I hear you. And I was so happy to get Tice back at the deadline. I've always been a Tice guy. You know, we were really sad when he got moved at the deadline last year. But you're exactly right. That deadline acquisition is just making more and more sense now. GM Brad should be getting a look for exec of the year. Ime Udoka should be front runner for coach of the year. Who's the head coach in Cleveland? Is it
JB Bickerstaff?
JB, that's right. Okay. I think those 2 guys should be the front runner for coach of the year, along with Monty Williams in Phoenix. I mean, they're having an incredible season. They've got 62 wins so far.
Yeah, they've been the clear and away favorite. And like Devin Booker missed significant time. Chris Paul's missed significant time.
Yeah.
I think DeAndre Ayton was out for a little while. Like they've pretty much every one of their key players, except for I think Mikal Bridges has been out for a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And they've still just been easily the best team in the NBA.
Absolutely. And I think moving forward, I think Celtics Suns would be the most fun finals matchup that we've seen in a long time. I know we last year was an interesting matchup because it was Giannis's first finals appearance, and they got Giannis got his ring. Last year was a lot of fun to watch. That Suns team was so much fun. Just like their whole run they went on through the Western Conference playoffs. That the last minute lob from Jay Crowder to DeAndre Ayton at the basket. That was fun. I just think not even storyline wise, I think the best basketball that we could watch in the finals would be Celtics Suns. So that's that would be my prediction at the moment.
It'll be an absolute rock fight. It's gonna be similar to like what we're gonna see out of like the Celtics lineup with Miami. So I think right now as it stands, number 1 and number 2 in defensive rating are the Celtics and the Suns.
Yeah.
So It'll be a gritty battle. You know, a lot of really good defenders. Both teams like don't really have a weak point defensively. Like I guess the easiest guy you can attack on either side is probably Devin Booker, and Devin Booker's turned himself into a very at least like average defender.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was when I was doing my research for DP our defensive teams, which we'll get to in a little bit. Devin Booker made his way up on both defensive rating, net rating, and win shares. Like his uh the just like the advanced stats on Devin Booker's defense have made a massive jump, and I can see why Phoenix and all of the followers of the Suns are really making a push for him to be the MVP this season. Especially like you said, you highlighted all the injuries that Phoenix has had, all the lineup differences. Devin Booker's still coming out giving you 26 points, 4, 5, 6 assists, 4, 5, 6 rebounds, playing incredible basketball. Always been a lights out shooter. And there's been a national sort of resurgence or not resurgence, but a national sort of outlining of his case for MVP, being the best player, the best scorer on the best team in the NBA. Like you said, far and away the best team in the NBA. So that there's merit in that, at least, you know, like I'm sure we have biases, and the NBA has biases and media has biases, but Devin Booker has a legitimate case.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with them is like what's tough, and same thing we could say with Rob and Smart is like it seems kind of crazy that like in our case, the best defensive team. For a while, Smart and Rob weren't really getting a lot of respect for Depoy when you had the best defensive team and the two best defensive players on it. Where you see the Suns, they're a lot of the same. Like a lot of people say the same thing. It's like, okay, who's the best player on the team? Is it Chris Paul or is it Devin Booker?
Yeah.
I think Devin Booker is probably a little bit better in my book. I think it's very close though, based
Mm-hmm.
on the impact they have on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But it seems kind of crazy that there hasn't been a discussion that either one of these guys I really haven't heard any talk about either one of these guys being the MVP discussion, despite them being the number one team and them being the best team for pretty much the entire season. They've been like far and away the best team. I really haven't heard much talk about either one of them
Right.
Getting an MVP, which is kind of crazy. But do you have any other takes from around the NBA? We kind of see the Western Conference starting to really separate.
It is, yeah.
They're fighting for that last spot in the West. The East is still just like we talked about earlier. It's like kind of jam packed in a couple different sections of teams.
Right. They're in the East. At least there are two clear cut like sections. There are the top four, and then there's Brooklyn, Charlotte, Toronto, and Cleveland.
Chicago too.
Chicago.
We could get into the all defensive teams now. We're about 20 minutes in.
Yeah. I sent you my list because so you've seen mine already.
I know.
How does it stack up against yours?
We have a lot of the same names, and a lot of the names I was really thinking about. Like I had basically as an honorable mention, you had and didn't left off. We've kind of flip flopped some of the first and second teams, so we should have a little bit of a debate here.
Okay, let's start the second team.
Yeah, I tried to find as many stats to back up my case as possible, especially with the Western Conference guys.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I mean, being honest, I think both of us, like, we don't watch very much Western Conference basketball just because it's. I mean, you might because you stay up later, but I mean, I would go to bed usually at 10 o'clock when those games are tipping off.
Yeah.
So.
Plus, I'm all in the Central Time Zone. I get like that extra hour. So if I am up at a later time, I can catch the back end of some Western Conference games. Yeah. And you know me, just a little sports junkie. So
I tried to look at a couple things. I took in like word of mouth from just other NBA experts I've kind of been not talking to, just listening to.
Yeah.
What I've seen, some of the numbers that back it up. And so it made it tough looking. I think a big part of it, I know in the past, has been like team defense matters a lot too. Like obviously we see guys like great individual players, but it's kind of hard to vote them to an all defensive team if they're missing a bunch of games or their team defense isn't too good. That's the one thing that really hurt a couple guys that I think you had on your list that I kind of looked at them and they had quite a few games missing.
Yeah, that was my second team was really hard for me to figure out just because I I told you last week I wasn't going to put Rudy Gobert on this list,
Yeah.
and I also it was very hard to find the fourth like the second team guard. Like the
Yeah.
guard play is just so hard. Like
So that was that spot. Was that the spot you put Drew Holiday in?
I put Drew Holiday and Chris Paul as my second team.
I had Chris Paul and Matisse Thybulle.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a decent comp too because I could have gone that way. I just think so. Let's get into it. I just think that Chris, albeit you said you brought up the fact that a lot of these guys had missed a lot of time. I mean, Chris Paul missed what, like 3 weeks with that a finger issue.
Yeah, I think he still played like upwards of like close. I think he's about 60 games right now.
Yeah, I was exactly. So I like, and plus being one of the top two defenses in the league and a veteran guy, I think the NBA would lean towards.
And he's
Chris
made a
Paul.
ton already. Like, I mean, he has the reputation. Like, reputation does matter in these
That's
things.
what I'm saying. Yeah. So like, I think the NBA would award Chris Paul a second team all defensive team for being on one of the top two defensive teams in the country. I mean, in the league. And
I have some other nerd numbers I can pull out real quick too.
I got to go preheat the oven.
Okay. So talking Chris Paul, he was 13th in defensive win shares. He was 4th in steal percentage and 4th in steals per game, as well as being 5th in defensive box plus minus. And just a reminder of defensive box plus minus, it's how much better your team is at defense when you're on the court as opposed to when you're off the court. So he ranked fifth in that. And once again, we said Suns had the second best defense. My argument for Thybulle, it was really against Drew Holiday and DeJounte Murray were really the two guys I was kind of arguing against. I think best, I probably would have leaned Drew, but I think
DeJounte Murray was the guy that I was flip-flopping between Chris Paul and him. I think it came down to defensive rating and team success in that matter.
Yeah. And that's why when Tybulle's had some pretty terrible guards beside of him for most this year. Or some of his crazy numbers, third in the league in defensive box plus minus. So he makes such a huge difference defensively when he's on the court, which obviously ranks first amongst guards. He led the league in steal percentage and steals per game. Yeah, so those are my guard picks. Like I said, Drew passed the eye test, but just looking at the stats, he didn't really rank very high in any of the either advanced or really a lot of the standard defensive analytics. And he missed quite a few games too. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're gonna have another guy on here, which I'm sure you can expect.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like they weren't a very good defensive team. I understand Drew's obviously an incredible defender. If I was to pick a guy to lock up any guard in the league, I'd probably choose Drew Holiday. But I just feel like he hadn't warranted enough. And I feel like they've been kind of coasting this year. So it seemed kind of hard to put two Bucks on the all defensive team when they were like I think they were literally like 15th or 16th in defense. So they're like a very average defensive team. I really couldn't warrant having two guys from that team.
I hear that. That's very sound logic. My counter to that, and the reason why I have him on there is the same reason Chris Paul is on mine, just for longevity in the league, the notoriety of being a lockdown defensive guard, and also what I said before. I mean, the guard selection for defensive team is very slim. Like, it's hard to pick out like the 4 best defensive guards. It just seems like team defense has been a bigger sort of idea for this whole season. Like we've definitely seen it with the Celtics, and I mean, like, throughout the league, there's been a movement towards a team defense approach, switchability, defensive versatility, things like that. So it was tough for me to find those guards, and I ended up falling back on the NBA being sort of rigged, sort of not rigged, but like
they would rather. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like all-star games. It's like if they're choosing between, if it's really tight, most times the coaches are choosing between a guy that's made it a few times and a guy that hasn't. They'll choose that because that way you don't wind up with Kyle Korvers or Jeff Teagues making all-star games, because you have at least like veterans that maybe didn't deserve it, but at least like it'll look better looking back on it.
Right.
Like looks good. Be like, okay, like 4-time all-star, I know who, like Jaylen Brown, rather than like one-time All-Star like Jeff T. Like they'd rather have that. They'd rather have a guy that's a multi-time All-Star than a guy that makes like one kind of fluky All-Star game. So forwards might be interesting for second team.
Yeah.
My forwards, I think we're definitely have different ones for second team. My forwards were Evan Mobley and Giannis. It's all the way down to second team.
Okay, I had I picked 3 forwards. I guess you can put Jaren Jackson as a center. I my front court was Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Draymond Green.
Yeah.
For my second.
I had Rob, yeah, I guess because typically they do go center forward in defensive teams, but I had Rob as my second team center.
Yeah, I went the homer route and put Rob as my first team.
Yeah,
center.
I think it's just tough making like the Celtics were the best defensive team. Rob's obviously missed some time. I think it's I don't know. It was tough. Like I really wanted to put him first team, but I feel like that would be homerism. I feel like a lot like I'm not only trying to predict what I think should be it, but also like what I think the votes will actually come down to. And I think there's a really good chance Rob does make the second team. I think it'd be very hard for him to get the votes over Gobert.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. And I went sort of chalky with the guards, and then went with my own personal like opinion with the big men, because as we've seen all season, the big men have led the charge with all defensive team and defensive player of the year voting, and as it's been for the last since Gary Payton won defensive player of the year. I mean, I have one of my forwards on the first team is Bam, and I mean like he plays power forward and center, like so.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty liberal with the positions, so I guess it really didn't matter. Like I probably would have considered Rob if I wanted to fit a narrative to put him at forward over Bam.
Yeah.
But just my argument for Rob, he's second in blocks, third in block percentage, fourth in defensive win shares, fourth in defensive box plus minus, and he's on the number 1 defense in the NBA. Really good resume, probably a resume that you stack up against any player and say that this guy could be your defensive player of the year, or this guy could be all defensive first team member.
Yeah.
I just try not to be too homerish. I know, like I'm sure he's deserving, but I try not to be too homerish with my picks. Evan Mobley, I think it's interesting. We both had Evan Mobley. Like obviously, his what he's done this year has deserved it, but it's kind of crazy putting a rookie on this team, especially a rookie big man like this, like a guy that's a power forward center kind of player.
Yeah.
Usually it takes longer for these guys to like physically develop, but the Cleveland Cavaliers definitely deserve to at least have one member on this team. They were 5th in team defense.
Certainly.
He was 9th in block percentage, 8th in defensive win shares. Is a guy pretty versatile as a big man. He can switch on to much smaller players. He can play the 5. He's mostly played the 4 this year, but he's been very versatile, very long. He can affect shots. He's a pretty good rebounder. He can do it all, and he's a guy that I'm sure is going to make a ton of these teams as he continues to get older. And
I agree completely. And I think that was one of the main issues when Cleveland drafted him, was the fact that he was undersized, and he didn't have he hadn't grown into that body yet, an NBA body. But it has turned out that he has used that quote unquote disadvantage into being one of the most versatile bigs in the game. He's looking like he could be the next Bam Adebayo, like that similar sort of build, not the same jump shot and things like that, not the same maneuverability with the basketball, but another guy who has an awesome switchability, versatility on the defensive end, and well deserving of a second team spot.
Yeah. And he's one too, where like you said, with like the center position, like I think Cleveland did a good job putting him in the power forward position. I think you see a lot of times like guys like DeAndre Ayton, guys that are playing like the true big man position. It takes them a couple of years till they really start to burst out. It really takes them a while till their body can finally catch up with them.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of these guys aren't going to be fully. You see very few. I mean, maybe Dwight Howard as a rookie, like very few centers are like, very few like true centers. I mean, have like that big man body like that coming in.
Yeah.
And lastly was Giannis. I mean, Giannis, easily you could put him as a first team. I think there's a lot of debate with some of the forwards here. Their team defense wasn't very good though. I think that's part of it. I think Giannis at times, maybe, like I said, they were coasting, I think, a little bit. He was still second in defensive box plus minus. So he was obviously made a huge impact for his team when he was on the court as opposed to being off. They were significantly better defensively. A lot of that had to do with they were really bad without him on the court because they really lacked a center for most of this year. Brook Lopez had been out
like
all
last
year.
week, right?
Serge Ibaka they didn't acquire till late, so they really were without a true center for most this year.
Mm-hmm.
Really makes it a big difference. 10th in defensive win shares, 8th in defensive rebounding percentage, and 11th in block percentage. So very well-rounded guy. I mean, I don't have to talk enough. Like clearly, Giannis is one of the best defenders in the NBA.
Yeah.
But I could see the case easily for him being first team. He was one of the tough ones with a couple of guys that I had.
Yeah, I had him. I had him at first team, and it's also my vendetta against Rudy Gobert. Is the reason why I have a Jaren Jackson in place of Giannis and Giannis on the first team. I just think, although I'm not a huge Giannis fan, I think that, like you said, he's an absolute force on the court. The opposing offenses switch the game plan so much to just try to combat the fact that Giannis is playing defense on them. I mean, we've seen it all week. He shut down Embiid. He shut down Kevin Durant this week or last week maybe. And those two guys, I mean, Embiid's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. Kevin Durant's won MVPs before. He's won scoring titles. He's won finals MVPs. Like he goes toe to toe with the best players in the league. And as of recently, he's came out on top. So that's the reason why he's in my top. And I also think that Jaren Jackson deserves a look at second team. Jaren Jackson is a guy I've been a huge fan of from day one. Very happy to see that Memphis has turned their team around, especially without Ja for the last little bit of time. I think they're deserving of some accolades, and I think the NBA is going to award Memphis with that, and Jaren Jackson too. Who's a deserving defender? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I have him on my first team. He's on my first team. I have Jaren Jackson Jr. I didn't have Draymond just because of the lack of games, honestly. That was the one that I didn't have that you had. He played like 40 something. He played like 42 games. I was like, I just can't really put him on there. He only played half the season. But Jaren Jackson, they had a top 5 team defense. I believe that what I said, if Cleveland was 5th, I believe they're 4th.
Okay. The reason I have Draymond on there is just because for the first half of the season he was leading in the like sports books odds to win defensive player of the year. Yeah. I think that sort of that longevity, again, my whole NBA shtick about them being just willing to
the representation,
the representation of their guys. I mean, Golden State and Draymond have earned the reputation of being a perennial award-winning team, and I mean, he played incredible defense. He played Defensive Player of the Year defense for the first half of the season. I know he missed. I think he'd be creeping up on 50 plus at the end of the season.
I don't know. I think he was at 42 when I checked today. Because I checked. Really? Yeah. Yeah, so I left him off just because, like, I get it. When he was on the court, he was easily, I think he was the Defensive Player of the Year. I think when he was on the court, I think he was easily first team all defense. It just, he only played half the season, so it was really tough for me to like put him in over some of these guys that have played. So I think I'm basically made the cutoff. Like, I think the rest of these guys, especially the big men, played like at least like 55, 60 games. So that's like 20 more games than what Draymond played. But no, Jaren Jackson Jr. I believe they had the fourth best defense. He was 6th in defensive win shares. I think he was 2nd in block percentage. Ranked very highly among bigs in steal percentage. League leader in blocks per game. Was pretty versatile. He's a guy that can play the 4, can play the 5. And a huge part of Memphis' success this year. And then I had Bam. You had Bam first team as well?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, Bam. I mean, I think Bam was another guy. I think if he was able to stay healthy, he still got quite a bit of games in. But I think he was the favorite for a while once Draymond got injured.
Yeah, after Draymond. And then Giannis sort of took over. I was reading a whole bunch of like the line changes from like Caesar's Sportbook. Like the Vegas lines coming out of who is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. And I think around like the January, February time was when Draymond sort of came out. Draymond sat out, and then Bam started becoming the betting favorite, and Giannis took over. It was Bam and Giannis at that point.
Giannis is, the team defense was just looking like there's Depoys are usually like a top 3 defensive team. So
no, and your logic is sound. it's just like I watching the betting lines. I mean, like
Yeah.
again, to my logic, the NBA is going to go with guys that are perennial, and Giannis is that to
Yeah.
a T.
Yeah, I
So
see that. I thought Jaren Jackson deserved a little shine, which you obviously thought too. Put him like
absolutely, yeah,
Bam. I think he was fourth in defensive win shares. They had maybe I don't know where Memphis was because I had their top 5 defense, but I've said Cleveland was 5, and I said that, and now it's saying that Miami was 4. So maybe they're 3, or maybe they're 6. I don't know. Maybe I misread that. They had the 4th best team defense. He's a very versatile defender. He's a guy that can be used like we see Robert Williams being used kind of off ball and used as a rim protector. But we also see him being used matching up directly with guys like Giannis
yeah.
and Embiid are the 2 guys that he's really known to really stop to be the best stoppers you have for them.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a very elite skill. There's very few guys that can really slow down Embiid the way that Bam does. So I think that's why he's deserving. And then I had Rudy Gobert. Their team defense isn't very good either, but just his on-off numbers are like crazy for how much better they are with him on the court than when they're off the court. He's also an incredible defensive rebounder, which does impact defense, being able to take away those second chance points. Yeah, I mean, he's still able. He's always going to be up there in blocks. I think he's like 3rd in blocks per game. He's putting up numbers. He's still, like we said, I mean, he's not putting up. The team isn't the elite defense they usually are, but he's still playing very, very high level defense.
I think Rudy Gobert is a limp dick French bastard. Can't stand
I really don't like him. I really wish he would just go away. I think
I've been using limp dick pretty often these days, and Rudy Gobert fits that to a T.
Yeah, I think he's going to be one where I think they're going to be looking to trade him because I think it's clearly not working out. You can't put all that money in a guy that really can be played off the court when you have guys like Terrence Mann, where he had like 38 last year on him. Like,
yeah,
you can't be able to. Rob, we do similar things with Rob. The Bucks do similar things with Giannis, like trying to put them on the worst guy.
mm-hmm.
But like Rob's at least able to like defend on the perimeter better than Gobert can. Like Gobert he just can't really, isn't really effective on the perimeter, and teams
get swallowed up.
Like obviously he does make a huge difference because of his rebounding, and a lot of bad teams can't take advantage of that. They don't have the players, they don't have the personnel to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, but when teams have the personnel, they expose him.
Yeah, we see year in year out they get exposed in the playoffs. So
yeah,
but it stinks because he always puts up these numbers, and the team he still is a good defender. Like I hate it, but it's hard to argue against.
And I think Utah is going to be very quickly down the drain. I think Donovan Mitchell is going to be out too. I think Gobert gets traded. I think Donovan Mitchell gets traded, which is just sad for their fan base. But I mean, like, it's what they expect.
It's bad for Utah.
I can't feel bad. I mean, Utah is full of a bunch of Mormon non-drinkers and just weirdos. So I don't give a shit about Utah. But I do care about Donovan Mitchell potentially coming to the Celtics.
Yeah, that may be yeah, we'll table that. We'll see where we see in the offseason what moves need to be made. But
yeah.
And lastly, we have our guards. So I'm guessing we have the same 2 guards because they haven't been mentioned. I think we both kind of cheated a little bit, but I've seen him mentioned as a guard for all defensive teams where I've looked other places.
Yeah.
And that guy's Mikal Bridges.
Absolutely.
We have Mikal Bridges, and obviously we both have Marcus Smart first team because he's I'm gonna go out on a limb. I guess we'll try to spoil it, but I think we both probably are thinking Marcus Smart's the defensive player of the year, so we have him first team.
Absolutely.
Just the case from Mikal Bridges. He would be first team if he was considered forward. I would probably bump Jaren Jackson Jr. down to second team or Rudy Gobert down to second team. Number 2 defense. He's 7th in defensive win shares. First, if you consider him a guard, he'd be actually ahead of Marcus Smart in defensive win shares if he was considered a guard. I still consider him a wing. He's still second if you consider him a wing, only behind Jason Tatum, who is really far up there in win shares and got really in there.
The win shares numbers that I was looking at today was absolutely crazy to see Jason Tatum ahead of all of these perennial all defensive first team players.
That's where the eye test does come in. Like, these are the only guys who are really watching super consistently, and we can tell like Tatum's a really great defender, but he's not as good as Marcus Smart and Robert Williams. He does not impact the game as much. So like that's where the eye test does come into play, and that's where it's really tough for these Western Conference guys, where we really don't get to see them play very often. And these guys that don't play for the Celtics, or at least don't play in the Celtics division, we really don't get to see them a ton.
Yeah.
And number one, the other guard, Marcus Smart. The case for Marcus Smart, he's on the number one defense. Highly switchable guy, a guy that can switch 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw him today guarding Kristaps Porzingis in the post and having no problem with it, boxing him out, having no problem with it.
Yeah.
93rd percentile in steal percentage, so one of the top in the league in steal percentage. 71st in foul percentage, so he doesn't foul very often for a guard. 10th in defensive win shares, and he'd be number one amongst guards as long as you don't count Mikal Bridges. But
my favorite tweet of like post Celtics game is Greeny sending out Marcus Smart guarded X on X amount of possessions and gave up 0 points. Marcus Smart guarded this guy on X amount of possessions and gave up 2 points.
Like, I mean, he's really the cog that turns the whole thing, because like in years past, teams will pick on guys like Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas, Kemba Walker, especially they'll get picked on. Like the point guard usually gets picked on in playoff situations.
Yeah.
You see it with Trae Young, like even those guys get picked on, obviously if their offense can outweigh it, like we saw with Kyrie, not so much with Kemba, it really doesn't matter. But they just don't have a guy to pick on. Like the smallest guy on the court is Marcus at 6'3", but he's just so strong.
He's guarding centers.
Yeah, like he was like, I mean, you have Kristaps Porzingis, like can't back him down. Like he's just that strong that he can take on guys that are a foot taller than him and outweigh him by 50 pounds. So that's what really separates him. And that's what makes him such an important player to this team and such an important defensive player. And I do think the narrative is fitting him very well. I think the voter fatigue, I think Gobert right now is number one. I think a lot of people would have considered number one most years, but I think there's a lot of voter fatigue because I think he'd be one of like only 2 players ever to win it 4 times, or maybe he'd be the only one to win it 4 times. And I don't think they want to put him in that elite category, especially like we were saying, when he gets picked on the playoffs. Like none of these other guys get picked on like that. These guys,
he's a fucking bitch. He's a loser.
So that really takes him out of it. And then you also have like the number one defense going for Marcus Smart, which is typically what they look like. Last year we saw Gobert winning again. I think it was in the last like 4 years. It had been Gobert 3 times and Giannis once. I think all 3 times those teams were in the top 3 in defensive rating.
Yeah.
So typically it goes to a guy on the very best like defensive team. I think Rob going out really helps Smart. I think they would have taken votes away for each other, even though Rob's only really missing like 8 or so games. Not even 8 games. Yeah. About 7 games to end the season.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's helping Smart's case because Smart's going to have those, as long as he plays pretty much every game from here on out, he's going to have those games racked up. He's going to continue to improve those win shares. The Celtics are still going to play well defensively. And I just think that helps his case. And I think it's going to hurt Rob's just because he's not going to be there. I think people are going to forget about him a little bit. But I think most of the votes will lean towards Smart. I think Marcus has a really good chance to win D-point and be the first guard since 1996 to do that.
Absolutely. I think Marcus is the best defensive player in the NBA. I'm glad that the entire world is about to see it. He's going to get the recognition he deserves. And throughout the playoffs, I think it's going to be a massive storyline of the fact, like it was not a big storyline, but a big storyline in Boston that Marcus Smart was going to be our point guard. Like the fact that, like you said, there are no positions you could pick on this team. There is a group of guys that are so switchable. They're not a flaw in their defensive scheme. And to tell you the truth, you have to give credit to Ime. I mean, like we were very, very anti-Ime for the first 2 months of the season, and hand up, like we were wrong. He turned it around. He galvanized the system he really had everybody buy in, and I think that is a lot of credit to Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown.
To be determined. So we end with the Grizzlies. So we play Miami and Milwaukee, who obviously that could
No,
determine a lot.
Chicago and Milwaukee.
Chicago and Milwaukee. It was one of those playoff teams. So Chicago and Milwaukee. That will determine obviously a lot of playoff seedings. Playoff teams that's something to play for. Chicago wants to try and improve, I think, their situation as best they can.
Yeah.
I think obviously Milwaukee is going to want to, maybe they'll take it easy. I don't know. They might be trying to play for matchup at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. I think Memphis, either way, I think we might rest a bunch of guys depending on where we're at on Sunday. I think Memphis for sure will, because they've already been locked into the 2 seed. There's no way anyone's going to catch them. There's no way they're going to catch Phoenix.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much just chilling. So I think that'll be one at least free win. And then we'll have to wait and see. We're going to be locked into one of those top 4 seeds, I'm sure. But it's crazy that there's so much that could be up in the air. We could be a 1 seed, we could be a 4 seed sitting here next week.
Yeah, with 3 games left.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's just a very competitive race in the top of the East, and that's good to see. And it's good to see the Celtics in there.
Absolutely,
especially from where we started this year. But okay, well, I don't think we have anything else.
Just, I mean, outside of basketball, Patriots traded a 3rd-round pick for Devonte Parker.
Yeah, saw that. That's good. He was good at football last time I watched him.
Yeah, always been pretty good at football. Just played in Miami. Hopefully last year he finished with, I believe if my numbers are correct, is like 40 plus catches for 550 yards and 4 touchdowns. If he gets in the target of 60, 70, 80 catches this season, he could be a 1,000-yard receiver, 8 plus touchdowns. Just depends on max development. The implementation of Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. I mean, I've been very high on Kendrick Bourne. He was, as of like week 15 last year, he was wide receiver 21 in fantasy. I know I've got sort of the fantasy angle with the writing gig, and so like as a receiver, Kendrick Bourne was the best Patriots guy. But Jacoby Myers saw, I think, 130 targets last season. That number is probably going to go down with Devonte Parker in tow behind him. But Devonte Parker, Kendrick Bourne, and Jacoby Myers could all be in line for 100 targets. I was reading a piece today. The wide receiver core for the Patriots is not like your normal show-stopping receiving group.
Not really big names outside of Parker, honestly.
No, but they have guys that do a lot of different things. Jacoby's great over the middle. So is Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne is great in space. If you get him the ball, he can do a lot with it. Nelson Aguilar, another a guy that can really turn on the jets, get downfield. And Devonte Parker is the guy that we hoped N'Keal Harry would be. Bigger body, a contested ball, a contested reception guy. There was a stat. Devonte Parker led the league last year in contested catches, in which it was like something with less than 1 yard of separation. He had like a 60+% catch rate on passes with less than 1 yard of separation, which is huge, especially with a young quarterback, especially in the system where the Patriots throw the ball over the middle a lot, don't take deep shots all the time. But this opens up the offense to a degree. It'll be interesting. Have you heard anything about the offensive coordinator for the Patriots? I don't think that the position's been named yet.
I have no idea. Yeah, no, I do not. I'm not tuned into football season. Usually I start tuning in around the draft, and then I'll start, which is coming in a couple weeks. Usually I'm just like completely ignorant to football until then. And then I like start to like look at the free agents and stuff. But Then other than that, Red Sox will be started by the time we talk next week, and Sea Dogs will be getting going too. I'm gonna go down to their opening night on Friday, so that should be fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's awesome. And you've got a birthday coming up too. What is it? The 22nd?
26.
The 26th. What day of the week is that?
I think it's on Tuesday this year, which is lame.
That stinks.
I know.
Taco Tuesday though.
Yeah, no, I think it was on a Saturday during the middle of the pandemic, so that was cool.
Yeah,
it's completely wasted it. Just like wasted a perfect day. Oh, your 21st must have been on.
No, my 22nd was on a Friday in the middle of like 3.5 feet of snow. I was living at Rick's house and I had no power, snowed in. My birthday meal was a slice of pizza from Circle K.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will see you next week, pal, and we'll have the Eastern Conference. We'll be all wrapped up at that point.
Absolutely. We'll have a jam-packed weekend next week.
Okay. Peace.
See you, buddy.